The war in Sudan, particularly the conflict in Darfur, has drawn international attention and condemnation, with some observers labeling it a genocide. This term, laden with historical and legal implications, is used to describe acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. In this episode, we will explore the reasons why some observers consider the war in Sudan a genocide by delving into the history, key events, and the impact on affected populations. On April 15, 2023, violent clashes broke out between the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, in Sudan, leading to the displacement of over 8.6 million people, encompassing internally displaced persons, IDPs, asylum seekers, and refugees. This conflict intensified many of Sudan's pre-existing issues, including ongoing conflicts, disease outbreaks, economic and political instability, and climate emergencies. But, this is a crisis that has been brewing over a long time. The roots of conflict in Sudan are deep and complex, involving a mix of ethnic, political, and economic factors. Sudan, Africa's largest country by area until South Sudan's independence in 2011, has been plagued by internal conflicts since its independence from Britain and Egypt in 1956. The most notable conflicts include the First and Second Sudanese Civil Wars. These conflicts, primarily between the North and the South, were driven by ethnic, religious, and cultural divisions, with the predominantly Arab and Muslim North clashing with the largely African and Christian or animist South. The Darfur conflict, which began in 2003, is particularly cited as an example of genocide. It involves government forces and allied militia, known as the Janjaweed, against revolutionary groups in the Darfur region. The Darfur conflict erupted in 2003 when two non-Arab rebel groups, the Sudan Liberation Army (SLA) and the Justice and Equality Movement (JEM), took up arms against the Sudanese government, accusing it of neglecting the Darfur region and favoring Arab groups. The government responded with a brutal counter-insurgency campaign, employing both the Sudanese armed forces and the Janjaweed militia. The recent clashes between the SAF and RSF erupted at a time when Sudan was already facing its highest levels of humanitarian need in a decade. The overthrow of longtime authoritarian leader Omar al-Bashir in 2019 had initially sparked hope for a transition to civilian rule in Sudan. However, a military coup 2 years later dissolved the transitional civilian government, plunging the country into political and economic turmoil and reigniting intercommunal conflicts. The key elements that have led observers to consider the conflict a genocide include systematic targeting of ethnic groups, because the Sudanese government and Janjaweed militia have been targeting specific ethnic groups, primarily the Fur, Masalit, and Zagawa, which are non-Arab communities. These groups have faced widespread violence, including mass killings, rape, and the destruction of villages. There have also been reports from various human rights organizations and international bodies that have documented mass killings and atrocities committed by government forces and allied militias. Estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands of people have been killed since the conflict began. This conflict has resulted in the forced displacement of millions of people, According to the United Nations, over 2.7 million people have been internally displaced, while hundreds of thousands have fled to neighboring countries as refugees. Again, there have been numerous reports of systematic rape and other forms of sexual violence used as weapons of war against women and girls from targeted African ethnic groups. These acts are intended to terrorize, destabilize, and annihilate communities. The deliberate destruction of homes, crops, and livestock has been another tactic used to decimate the economic base of targeted communities, leaving them without the means to survive. The international community has responded to the Darfur conflict with a mix of lukewarm humanitarian aid, peacekeeping missions, and diplomatic efforts. These responses have therefore been insufficient to stop the atrocities. In 2004, the United States government officially declared the situation in Darfur a genocide, a designation that underscored the severity of the crisis and called for urgent action. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has also issued arrest warrants for Sudanese officials, including former President Omar al-Bashir, on charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. These charges highlight the systematic nature of the atrocities committed and the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, specific ethnic groups. Achieving lasting peace is not rocket science. It requires addressing the root causes of the conflict and promoting reconciliation among the affected communities. Key steps include 1. Inclusive peace processes. Ensuring that peace negotiations involve all relevant stakeholders, including representatives of the affected communities, is essential for creating a sustainable and inclusive peace agreement. 2. Justice and accountability. Holding those responsible for atrocities accountable is crucial for achieving justice and preventing future violence. Strengthening judicial mechanisms and supporting the work of the ICC are vital components of this effort. 3. Humanitarian aid and development. Providing more realistic humanitarian assistance to those in need and investing in long-term development projects can help rebuild communities and improve living conditions. 4. Promoting reconciliation. Encouraging dialogue and reconciliation among the affected communities can help heal the wounds of the conflict and foster a sense of unity and cooperation. The war in Sudan, particularly the conflict in Darfur, serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of ethnic and political violence. Recognizing the situation as a genocide underscores the need for urgent and sustained international action to protect vulnerable populations, hold perpetrators accountable, and support the path to peace and reconciliation. The international community must stop paying lip service and stand with the people of Darfur, advocating for their rights and providing the necessary resources to address the ongoing humanitarian crisis. By keeping their plight front and center, even if it's only through social media, we can help ensure that the victims of the Darfur conflict receive justice and that future generations can live in peace and security. As we reflect on the tragedy of Darfur, let us reaffirm our commitment to preventing genocide and protecting human rights worldwide.